The hardest aspects are majority you will sit down, do maybe an hour of writing, and then you don't you proofread it for a second, and your mind at the time when you're not writing what I just wrote will just be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. You give it to someone else. Someone else reads it through it. They say okay because they're just skim reading. They're just your friend. And then you give the paper to your English teacher. She'll read the first page and say, oh, this doesn't completely work. What are you doing? And then you're like, what do you mean? I have gone myself, someone else, and then you. How come you're the odd person now? Because she's actually sitting down reading the first paragraph to actually see what is going on in general. And then the frustrating thing, she won't read on until the end because she's like, I don't want to keep reading on and go through this jibble jabble, thinking they all without giving any more effort into what you put in, which is probably like 3 pages of writing that you put into censorship or whatever the topic of the day that the English teacher wants you to do, which is probably the most difficult thing because you sit down, rework all the work you did, and usually if you do this within the day, you don't really think, I need to sit down and slowly read this because you're like, I think I had this true because the teacher just said nothing to help this, and that's because she just said, oh, a general one sentence of why it doesn't work, not saying down red marks everything across the board, which in itself is a frustration. Very frustrating because it's like, I don't know what I'm fixing. Am I fixing this general construction context? Do I just rewrite stuff? And then that's why you kind of end up in this loop where eventually you keep submitting this paper that the teacher will just eventually give you a C-, which makes a passing grade, and you forget about the problem, and then you just have the paper on your Google Docs, and you're like, oh, let me reread this. Holy crap, I see why she had issues with this. After what, maybe a month of forgetting about this project. Like, if it's not in your mind, you can see the problem. But if it's in your mind, it's totally making a problem. And then when you have friends, family, people who want to fix this with you, you just have to point out and say, you just got to slowly read this. Make sure I actually have sentence structures that you're correcting. Like, you have to spend more than a simple glance. You have to spend more time saying, okay, hold on, this doesn't make sense. Make sure you read with me to make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing at this moment. And at that point, if they're not seeing what you're seeing, then you have to ask them, say it out loud. Does it make sense? And if they start adding words into it, then you kind of have a warning signal there to say, hey, what's happening with this? You don't have that word there. And they will, if they're nice and patient with you, they will sit down and go, oh yeah, that I don't have that word there. I'll put it in and it'll fix the problem. And that will be the most helpful in actually doing the work. Now, if you're trying to say this is the problem they have all the time, well, the best thing to do would be just say, English teacher, can you submit an IQ test for this person? Because I think this has a person problem. And I could point out this entire essay he just handed to me, or she handed to me, or whoever this beloved person you have is gender associated with. That's a fun world. But and if you had the teacher I have, which was Dr. McFerrin for creative college writing, who she retired now, which is unhelpful, but she'd be like, yeah, we'll totally submit a date and an appointment to have him tested for his IQ to see if he's making sense for what he's measured as, which I didn't, and it helped greatly a lot to give you more time for the assignment, because as the thing is, the whole worst thing about this thing is that you don't have time. You just want to get the work done. You have maybe a week to do it. Usually a teacher will give you a month, but you seriously know that most kids will just do this in a week, because why focus on an essay for a month and rewrite it? That's not fun. And the teacher the teacher will be very pleasantly surprised if you do that, but that's the thing. It ruins your kind of ability to quickly spread out written material without expressing yourself clearly, and that's the worst thing about it. And you gotta help fix it. Be their friend. Tell them that, hey, I think this is a problem. It's a general conversation. It depends on who you're talking to, what this person's willing to do, and you just have to discuss with it, which is super vague and unhelpful. But like anything else, you gotta outline the problem-solving skills that you're like, okay, how we're solving this, and how is the results of the solving this coming out? And if it doesn't help, then you gotta just try another process, which is the whole point of life problems, is that you're solving the problem, not putting the blame on writing detachment, dysgraphia, or anything. You're just trying to build a structure that they could live off and could always have a reasonable time to fix this, which is what the goal is. And that's all you have to think about. General texts, like after a while, sometimes even doing a single sentence, you screw up, because if you're completely thinking about something else and will write down your sideways thought will completely appear as the tree in the deer, especially with autocorrect, is your worst enemy, because you are not sitting down and thinking, oh, I'm not spelling this correctly, let me think this out, and then you're like, okay, there we go. But with autocorrect, it will instantly just grab the nearest thing to be like, oh, this solves it. There you go. You have a proper word. You don't have proper grammar, but you have a proper word. So like the deer was in the tree lot, and you're like, what? And then you go and you're like, no, I'm in the car in the parking lot waiting for you. And then you're like, I have to sit down and think seriously. And then that's the point where I just call someone and say, briefly, 5 seconds. Okay, I'm in the car in the parking lot. Any questions? No, good. All right, I'm hanging up now. And because after a while, you just become very blunt in what you're doing, because you don't want to sit down and figure out how to write the stuff out. When it's like, I could call this person up in 6 seconds and tell them what's going on faster than I could write this out.